My dad and his wife threw away my mom's stuff. I took it back and refused to return it. My father tried to talk to me several times after the confrontation with his wife. He tried to convince me that I should return the things, that it wasn't worth breaking the family over material possessions, but every time he did, his voice sounded more tired, more resigned. I stood my ground. It wasn't just about the things themselves, but about what they represented. They were the last tangible traces of my mother, the memories she left behind, the objects that had once been part of her life. I wasn't going to let them disappear just because someone else felt threatened by their presence. The arguments at home escalated. My brother, though he didn't live with us, constantly sent me messages telling me to stay strong. Our aunt supported me too, assuring me that everything I had rescued was safe at her house. But the tension became unbearable. My father's wife never missed an opportunity to make me feel like an intruder in my own home. She tried to push me away from my father, making it clear that I was the problem, that my presence was an obstacle to her happiness. Days passed and things only got worse. One day when I came home from school, I found my room in disarray. My things were scattered on the floor, drawers left open, clothes tossed around. I knew immediately who had done it. I ran down the stairs and found her in the living room with a satisfied smile on her face. "I was looking for what you stole from us," she said with disdain. "But I suppose you were smart enough to hide it somewhere else." "I didn't steal it," I replied angrily. "I saved it from the trash, where you threw it away without any respect." "That wasn't your right," she said, standing up. "This is my house, and I won't allow you to keep another woman's things here." "Then maybe I shouldn't be here either," I said, feeling a decision take shape in my mind. My father walked into the room just as the words left my mouth. I saw the surprise on his face, followed by something that looked like sadness. Maybe he understood, maybe he knew this couldn't be fixed. But instead of defending me, instead of taking my side, he remained silent. I wasn't surprised. He had already made his choice. And so had I. That same night, I packed my things. I didn't take everything, just the essentials. I called my brother and told him I needed help. He didn't take long to arrive. We left together, without looking back, without unnecessary goodbyes. My aunt welcomed us with open arms, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. My father tried to call me in the following days, but I didn't answer. I knew what he would say. I knew he would try to convince me to come back, to accept the situation. But I couldn't do it anymore. Not after everything. My father's wife also left messages, but hers were different, full of rage, insults. She called me ungrateful, manipulative, selfish. She said I was destroying my father, that I was abandoning him. But that wasn't true. He had made his decision long before I made mine. Time passed, and I learned to live with the absence. Not my mother's absence, because she would always be with me in my memories, in the things I had saved, in the stories I still told about her. But the absence of a father who decided that his new life was worth more than his old one. But I wasn't alone. I had my brother, my aunt, the people who truly cared about me. And yet, a part of me knew that this story wasn't over. That at some point, my father would try to fix what had been broken. Or maybe, just maybe, my father's wife wouldn't be satisfied with me being gone and would find a new way to cause trouble. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew one thing. This time, I was ready. The days at my aunt's house passed with a strange mix of relief and emptiness. For the first time in years, I didn't have to walk on eggshells. I didn't have to worry about my father's wife's critical gaze or her venomous comments. But I also felt the weight of everything I had left behind. It wasn't just the house I had grown up in, it was my relationship with my father, that bond one once believed to be unbreakable and that now hung by a thread. My brother and I started making plans. He had a job and could support himself, but I still depended on the stability my aunt provided us. I didn't want to be a burden, so I looked for ways to be independent. I got a part-time job at a nearby cafe and tried to keep myself busy. But every time my phone rang and I saw my father's name on the screen, something inside me stirred. I didn't answer. I knew that any conversation with him would end the same way. He would ask me to come back, to forget what had happened, to understand that his wife had the right to feel uncomfortable with my mother's memories. But to me, that was unacceptable. I couldn't forget, I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. 'Cause it did matter. One day, while I was wiping down tables at the cafe, I noticed someone watching me from outside. It took me a few seconds to recognize him. It was my father. He was standing by the window, looking tired, uncertain. I felt a knot in my stomach. I didn't want a scene at my workplace, so I finished what I was doing quickly and stepped outside. "What are you doing here?" I asked, crossing my arms. "I needed to see you," he replied in a low voice. "You haven't answered my calls." "I have nothing to say to you," I answered, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "Please, sweetheart. I don't want this to separate us forever." I remained silent. Looking at him, I realized he really did seem affected, but at the same time, I couldn't trust his words. He had let this happen. He had allowed his wife to treat us as if we were intruders in our own family. And now, after everything, he expected me to simply forget. "I don't know what you expect from me," I finally said. "I can't pretend like nothing happened. I don't want to lose you," he murmured, taking a step toward me. I took a step back. I wasn't ready for this. I couldn't let his words weaken me. I saw how his face reflected a shadow of pain at my reaction, but it wasn't my responsibility to heal the wound he had allowed to open. "I didn't want this either," I admitted. "But I'm not going back there, and I'm not going to forget what she did." He sighed, running a hand over his face. He seemed like he wanted to say something else, but in the end, he just nodded slowly. "If you're ever ready to talk, I'll be here," he said before turning and walking away. I watched him leave, feeling a sharp pain in my chest. I wanted to believe he truly wanted to fix things, but the damage was already done. It wouldn't be that easy to repair what had been broken. That night, when I got home to my aunt's house, I found my brother waiting for me with his arms crossed. His expression was serious. "Dad called me," he said bluntly. "He also came to see me," I replied, setting my bag on the table. "And what did you tell him?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "That I can't forget what happened, that I can't go back." My brother nodded slowly. "Good, because I can't either." We stayed silent. We knew this story wasn't over yet. We knew our father's wife wouldn't stay quiet, that she would find a new way to meddle in our lives. And even though we didn't know how or when, we were ready to face it. The days passed without too many changes. The routine at my aunt's house became a bubble of stability in the midst of the emotional chaos I had left behind. I knew my father wouldn't give up easily, but I also didn't expect his wife to stay out of it. And I was right. The peace didn't last long. One afternoon, while coming back from work, I received a message from an unknown number. It read, "Don't think you can keep what isn't yours forever. In the end, everything returns to its rightful place." I didn't need to be a genius to know who had sent it. I blocked the number immediately, though the unease lingered. I decided not to tell my brother or my aunt. I didn't want to worry them about something that, deep down, didn't surprise me. But what I didn't expect was for the situation to escalate so quickly. Couple of days later, when I got home, I found my aunt arguing heatedly with someone at the door. As I got closer, a chill ran down my spine when I saw my father's wife standing there, wearing a falsely polite expression that fooled no one. "Oh, here you are," she said as soon as she saw me. "I thought we could talk." "We have nothing to say to each other," I replied bluntly. My aunt crossed her arms, making it clear she wouldn't allow that woman to do as she pleased in her home. "If you're here to cause trouble, you'd better leave," my aunt warned. My father's wife let out a forced laugh. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to take back what belongs to me." "You have nothing here," I responded coldly. Her eyes narrowed and her voice took on a sharper tone. "Don't be ridiculous. Those things belonged to your father, and he decided he didn't want them anymore. You had no right to take them." I felt anger boiling inside me. "No, he didn't decide anything. You were the one who wanted to get rid of everything. But I won't let you destroy what's left of my mother just because you feel threatened by her memory." Her jaw tightened. "I'm not threatened. I just want our home to be free of ghosts from the past. Something you don't seem to understand. It's not your home, it's my father's house," I shot back. "And if he really cared about you, you wouldn't need to erase my mother to feel secure." For a moment, her expression showed something beyond anger. Maybe it was surprise, or maybe she simply hadn't expected me to respond that way. But she quickly regained her composure. "I'm not going to argue with you anymore," she said. "I'm giving you the chance to do the right thing. Return those things and we can put all of this behind us." My aunt stepped forward before I could answer. "You heard my niece. She has nothing to give you. So get out before I call the police." My father's wife huffed. throwing me one last venomous look before turning on her heel and walking away. But as she left, she muttered something under her breath that sent a chill through me. "This isn't over." I knew she meant it. And even though I tried to act normal, the unease didn't go away. That night, my brother got home late from work and immediately noticed my tension. "What's wrong?" he asked, frowning. I told him what had happened. His expression shifted from shock to anger in seconds. "I can't believe she had the audacity to come here," he muttered through clenched teeth. "This isn't just about Mom's things anymore. She's obsessed with controlling everything." I nodded. "And I don't think she'll stop," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "If she bothers you again, we'll call the police. She has no right to do this." "I know," I said, "but I doubt threats alone will stop her." He nodded, deep in thought. "Then we need to be prepared." The next few weeks passed without incident, but the feeling that something was about to happen never went away. And, sure enough, the next blow came when we least expected it. One afternoon, my aunt received a letter. It was a legal document, a lawsuit filed by my father's wife, claiming that we had stolen property from her home and demanding its immediate return. My heart pounded as I read it. She didn't just want my mother's things, she was formally accusing us of theft. My brother took the paper with trembling hands. "This is ridiculous," he said furiously. "She threw them away. She has no right to claim them now." "I know," I murmured, "but she's willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of us." My aunt looked at us seriously. "Don't worry. She's not going to get away with this. We'll get legal help and sort this out." But deep down, we knew this went beyond a simple legal battle. It wasn't just about objects or even about pride. This was a war she had started, and whether we liked it or not, we would have to fight it. The following weeks turned into a silent battlefield. The legal lawsuit kept us in constant tension, but beyond the judicial process, what truly worried us was how far my father's wife was willing to go. Her obsession with controlling every aspect of our lives had turned into a personal war, and we were her main target. My aunt immediately sought legal advice. The lawyer assured us that the lawsuit had little basis. We hadn't stolen anything, we had simply rescued objects that had been discarded. However, the real problem was that she had resources and was determined to make our lives miserable. Her strategy was clear: wear us down emotionally and financially until we gave in. My brother, who had always been the more impatient of the two, was furious. "I can't believe she's doing this," he said, slamming the table in frustration. "It's not even her life. It's not even her story." "To her it is," I replied tensely. "She's obsessed with erasing Mom from existence, as if she had never been part of Dad's life. And we're the last connection to her." My aunt nodded, crossing her arms. "That's why we can't let her get away with it. This isn't just about some objects. It's about respect, about remembering who your mother was and what she meant to you." We knew it wouldn't be easy. She wouldn't give up, and the lawsuit was just the beginning. Somehow, we felt that something worse was coming, and it didn't take long for us to find out what. One morning, as we stepped outside, we found an envelope at the door. It had no sender, just our last name written in careful handwriting. When we opened it, we found photographs. They were pictures of us taken at different moments over the past few days. My brother leaving work, me at the cafe, my aunt at the supermarket. A chill ran down my spine. "This is sick," my brother murmured, gripping the photos angrily. "They're following us." My aunt took the envelope and sighed, a mix of exhaustion and determination in her expression. "It's an intimidation tactic," she said. "They want us to feel unsafe, to be scared and give up. But instead of breaking us, it only strengthened our resolve. They thought they could scare us with veiled threats. They were dead wrong." The lawyer advised us to file a report, though we knew proving who was behind this would be difficult. There was no direct evidence pointing to my father's wife, but everything indicated she was the mastermind behind these tactics. My brother started taking more precautions. He made sure my aunt was never alone and accompanied me to work whenever he could. But despite everything, the feeling of being watched never went away. A few days later, another incident shook us. One night, as we were having dinner, the doorbell rang. My aunt got up to answer it and found a package wrapped roughly in brown paper. There were no labels, no sender. It was just there, like a warning. We opened it cautiously, and its contents left us breathless. Inside was a broken locket, one very similar to the one that had belonged to my mother. But the worst part wasn't the object itself. It was the note that came with it. "Anything you hold on to will break. Just like this. Just like you." My brother slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't just a manipulation game anymore. This is a real threat." The police took the case seriously, but without solid evidence, there wasn't much they could do. They advised us to be cautious and report any suspicious incidents. But the truth was, we were already living in a constant state of alert. Meanwhile, the lawsuit continued. Our lawyer submitted documents proving that the objects had been voluntarily discarded. My father's wife's defense argued that even if they had been thrown away, they still belonged to my father and we had no right to them. It was an absurd fight, but we knew it wasn't really about getting the things back. It was about breaking us. My father hadn't tried to contact us again. We didn't know if he was aware of what was happening or if he preferred to ignore it. His silence was yet another betrayal, and as much as it hurt to admit, every day he felt more like a stranger. My aunt, however, wasn't about to stand idly by. After the package incident, she decided to take action. "If they want to play dirty, we'll play smart," she said with a determined expression. "We're going to expose them." My brother and I exchanged glances, not entirely sure what she meant, but we soon found out. My aunt started reaching out to people who had known our mother, friends, neighbors, even distant relatives. She began collecting testimonies, photos, and memories that showed who our mother really was and how much she had meant to people. Then, with the help of a friend, she created a website dedicated to her memory. She uploaded pictures, stories, anecdotes. She shared what was happening, without explicitly naming anyone but making it clear that some people were trying to erase her existence. We didn't expect it to have such an impact, but within days, the page started gaining attention. People who had known my mother began sharing the page. We received messages of support from those who remembered her kindness, her passion for cooking, her way of making others feel welcome. The story spread further than we imagined, and soon even local media began to take interest. My father's wife didn't take long to react. She tried to discredit everything, claiming we were manipulating the situation. But it was too late. The truth was out and she couldn't control it. We knew this wasn't the end. But for the first time, we felt like we weren't alone in this fight. And for now, that was enough to keep going. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. The page dedicated to my mother's memory kept gaining traction, and with it, the pressure on my father's wife intensified. Not only had she lost control of the narrative, but her attempt to manipulate the situation was backfiring. People were beginning to see her for what she truly was, a desperate person trying to erase a past that didn't belong to her. The legal case moved forward, but no longer with the certainty she once believed she had. Our lawyer presented evidence of the intimidation attempts. The envelope with the photos, the destroyed locket, the threatening note. Police couldn't accuse her directly without conclusive proof, but the judge took these incidents into account as part of a pattern of harassment and pressure that weakened her case and made it clear that her lawsuit was more an act of revenge than a legitimate claim. Our Chrome extension allows you to listen to web pages, Google Docs, online Kindle books, and emails directly from the browser. Add it to Chrome for free. "I can't stay with someone who has caused so much harm," he stated. "It took me time to see it, but there's no going back. I lost too much trying to avoid problems. And I don't want to lose my children too." I didn't know what to say. For so long, I had been convinced that my father would never stand up for us, that he would never go against her. But there he was, finally seeing reality, though it was late. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," he continued. "I know I have to earn your trust again, but I want to try, if you'll let me." I looked at him for a long time, remembering all the times he had failed us, all the moments he chose silence over support. But I also saw something in him that I hadn't seen in a long time, genuine remorse, and maybe, just maybe, an opportunity to rebuild what had been broken. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I admitted. "But if you really want to fix this, show it with actions, not words." He nodded, accepting my response without pressuring me. The news of the divorce hit like a bomb in my aunt's house. My brother didn't know how to feel about it, and my aunt, though surprised, acknowledged that it was the best outcome for everyone. With the divorce in motion, my father's wife lost her power over us. Her lawsuit crumbled without his support, and in the end, she had to withdraw it. She didn't get what she wanted. She couldn't erase my mother. And most importantly, she couldn't destroy us. The healing process wasn't immediate. There were still scars, wounds that wouldn't disappear overnight. But at least for the first time in a long while, I felt like we could move forward. Little by little, I started rebuilding my relationship with my father. It wasn't easy. There was still resentment, still things to work through. But he was willing to make the effort, and that was more than he had done before. My brother took longer to accept it. For him, the damage ran deeper, and he wasn't ready to let it go so quickly. But at least he no longer had to carry the anger alone. The day we finally gathered at my aunt's house to remember our mother, without fear, without threats, without the shadow of someone trying to erase her legacy, I knew we had one. My mother's story wasn't erased, and neither was ours. We had fought for what was ours, and we had taken it back. Finally, the nightmare was over.